So, when was the last time that you looked at the Bible for your guidance? Not too often, right? I think that sometimes those of us in New Thought shy away from the Bible a little bit because of maybe some spiritual baggage that we're taking around with us from maybe a whole different religious upbringing. So, perhaps the whole idea of the Bible is a little frightening because the way it was presented to us. So in New Thought, we have a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible, and it's so much friendlier because it really is based on the loving teachings of Jesus. So perhaps we were like little Johnny, who was doing very badly in math, okay? His parents had tried everything to get him to learn how to do math. They sent him to special learning centers, in short, everything that they could, until they finally decided to enroll him in a local Catholic school. After the first day, little Johnny came home with a very serious look on his face. He did not kiss his mother hello. Instead, he went straight to his room and strewed the papers all around and started really working on the math. And his mother was amazed. She called him down to dinner, and shock in her amazement yet again, because he went right back up to his room and started working again. This went on for some time. And so while his mother tried to understand what really made all this difference, finally, little Johnny brought home his report card. He quietly laid it on the table and went back up to his room and started studying again. With great trepidation, his mother opened the report card envelope and saw that he got an A in math. And this was an absolute shock to her, and much to her delight, though, because that was the whole point. So she said, "What was it that really got you to understand math? Was it the nuns?" He shook his head. No. Well, then she asked, was it the books? No. And she said, was it the discipline? No, he said. The structure? Mm-mm. Little Johnny looked at her and he sheepishly said, well, on the first day of school, when I saw that guy hanging from the plus sign, I figured they really weren't fooling around. So maybe there's a little fear in your upbringing over your past, it takes a while. Your past experiences of studying the Bible. You might have really gotten a lot of, a little bit of fear there. So we're going to talk today about, today we're going to have a lesson called Coming Home. Coming Home. And it's based on Jesus' parable of the prodigal son. So what does really prodigal mean anyway? Anyone know? Okay, foolishly extravagant, got it out of my dictionary, and wasteful. That's what it means. So who is this prodigal son? And what does it represent to us? Today we're going to look at the ultimate freedom, the freedom of choice, and where we can get those choices. Through the parable of the prodigal son that appears in the Bible at Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. This was perhaps one of Jesus' most beautiful and powerful parables. Irving Seal, in his book, Learn How to Live, the Meaning of the Parables, said, this parable is a jewel in the Bible and of literature. It is outstanding from any point of view. And in another book entitled Jesus' Parables, Finding Our God Within, author Robert Winterhalter writes, Jesus' parable of the prodigal son is a literary masterpiece. Its imagery is striking and its message is profound. And Ernest Holmes, he writes a lot about the prodigal son, in Science of Mind textbook wrote, the parable of the prodigal son constitutes constitutes one of the greatest spiritual lessons in the history of religious education. So I decided to start this month of June with a bang, with the jewel of the Bible. And so let's look at this parable and the lesson it has for us about our ultimate freedom. Remembering that a parable is a story about us and our relationship to God. So with the help of Dennis Flynn this morning, as the voice of Jesus, you will get to hear the parable in its entirety as written in the George Lamb's version of the Bible, with some thoughts and ideas sprinkled in throughout. So we shall begin.
A certain man had 2 sons.
In presenting the parable of the prodigal son, Jesus began by saying that the father had 2 sons, right? Meaning that the Son of God, as the Son of God, man has the right of self-choice. And this carries with it the possibility of apparent duality. And we know that there really isn't duality, but we are living in the human and we are living in the divine, so it feels like 2. The possibility is there of experiencing what we call good and evil. And Moses referred to the same when he said that he had set a blessing and a curse before the children of Israel, and that they must choose whom they are going to serve. Metaphysically, the 2 sons in this parable refer to the 2 states of consciousness necessary to real individuality. Each of us has a conscious, self-knowing mind, equipped with volition and choice. Each of us is an individual, and we can do as we choose right up to any moment. So in these first few words, the idea of our ultimate freedom is introduced.
And the younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion which is coming to me from your house." And he divided to them his possessions.
So when the youngest son asks for his portion of good, the father did not argue with him, did not try to dissuade him, he didn't suggest that he was using bad judgment. He did not tell his son that it would be far better for him to remain at home. He did not say that it is a cold, cruel world out there. He did not say that he might be taken advantage of and might even starve. No, he didn't tell him any of those things. He simply divided all his worth and gave him half. What does that say about our relationship then to God? God never argues, yeah? God never argues. God always says yes. Gives us exactly what we think, exactly what we feel, exactly what we state. Gives it to us freely, without judgment. This passage of the parable is telling us that what we accept in our consciousness, we receive in the world because God always says yes.
And after a few days, his younger son gathered everything that was his share and went to a far country.
Far country. Far country. It does not mean a place, but rather a state of consciousness. A state of consciousness. A state of consciousness which has separated itself from the eternal good of God. Not often. Well, how often? How often do we find ourselves in that far off? We find ourselves in that far country. Once in a while. That is the major problem with our world today. People are off in the far country of consciousness. The far country of God. Ernest Holmes wrote about that. He said the true meaning of far country is a consciousness separate from God, an isolated state, one in which there appears to be no remembrance of God as an actual living and ever-present reality. And he continues, one where we feel ourselves to be separated and entirely apart from the eternal good. Jesus then told us what happens when we go off into this far country of consciousness.
And there he wasted his wealth in extravagant living, and when all he had was gone, there was a severe famine in that country, and he began to be in need.
Listen to these powerful words. Powerful. When we separate ourselves from the divine fire, we become just this remaining spark. When we separate ourselves from the beautiful fire that is love, that is God, we become we are strong only when we are united with life, capital L, life, God, good, God the good. As soon as our consciousness is detached from spiritual wholeness, we can no longer draw from that inexhaustible reservoir of external existence. So we become exhausted. We become uncle. We become like, I give up. When we are not connected with this power of God on that deep level, there is nothing to fall back on. We have this emptiness within us because we have not recognized. So being separate from God in consciousness may work for a while. It works for a little while, but not for the long haul. Not for that. Some point in our lives, we're going to want to connect with that power, that love, that is divine, that is us. It's in us. So we're just opening up to it. So God is one. We are not a separate unit. There is only unity. There is only wholeness. There is only a oneness. So it really is impossible for us to feel separate from spirit without feeling lost. That's when we feel lost. That's when we don't feel connected and in want. Remember what Jesus said about his ministry. Of myself I can do nothing. It's the Father within that doeth the work. And that is a great line just to carry with us and to know. The Father within that doeth the work. That divine within each and every one of us does a much better job. And it's only when we live in conscious union with Spirit and consciously let it work through us that we really live.
So he went and got acquainted with one of the citizens of that country.
The son is looking for a solution. The symbolism here is very interesting, for it perfectly depicts the state of humanity where we're off in this far country, and the citizen referred to means our attempt, the attempt on our part to find some cause outside of spirit. We try to do this, all this stuff. We try to find the solution from the effects on the outside and don't look inside. Ernest Holmes writes on that. We look for the cause in the effect and unknowingly put the cart before the horse, not realizing that the flower is already inside the seed and the effects must follow the cause. We have it backwards.
And the citizen sent him to the field to feed the swine.
And we're not going to find our answer outside. Instead, what we'll do is sink even lower. As this sentence symbolically tells us, remember, Jesus was a Jew, and it was against the law for them to eat of swine. So, consequently, he used this term to show how completely the prodigal son had fallen to the depths of his being. He fell as low as he could possibly fall. And this demonstrated his state of being. This is all symbolic. It symbolizes his state of being. And it was so low that it was impossible to get any worse. And you might say that he hit a spiritual bottom at that point. Spiritual bottom.
And he craved to fill his stomach with the husks that the swine were eating, yet no man would give him.
How true this is. How true this is. No one can give us but ourselves. and no one can rob us but ourselves. Truly and absolutely, it might look like someone else, but it's always going to come back to us, to us. In our greatest extremity, in the moment of our greatest need and dire desires, distress, who can help serve us? At what point? Who can serve us? All of our troubles, then, all of our troubles come from this isolated sense of being. We alone can return to the Father's house. The question might be asked, where was the Father when all this was going on? Why did he not help his beloved Son? Did he not care about his Son's welfare? Or as we look at this metaphysically then, why did God let this or that happen? Ernest Holmes says again, he has our answer to this question. God is, hear this, God is always God, and man can always do as he pleases. He would not be an individual unless this were possible. The Father is never conscious of incompletion. The Father's house is always open. The latch string ever hanging out. The door always ajar. This is Holmes. But man must enter if he wishes to abide within the harmony and never be in the discord. The truth can never produce a lie. God can never be less than God. Could God enter into a field of strife? Then he would not be God. This is Holmes. God cannot enter into a pig pen. We cannot contract the infinite, but we can expand the finite. It is always this way. We just turn to God, which is what the Son did in the nick of time, I might add.
And when he came to himself, he said, "How many hired workers are now in my Father's house who have plenty of bread, and I am here perishing with hunger?"
And when he came to himself, right, he came to himself, this is the great awakening. An awakening to the idea that we come from the Father's house, and this house is filled with peace, filled with power, filled with plenty. It's that aha moment that some of us say we have, in which we realize that the universe is not limited, right? It's limitless. Unlimited. It is abundance, lavish abundance. It's extravagance. It's opulence. We are awakening to the realization that the universe is perfect and complete. Perfect and complete. It is love, it is good, and will good for us. It gives to us. And then we come to self-condemnation.
And the prodigal said, "I will rise and go to my father and say to him, 'My father, I have sinned before heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Just make me like one of your hired workers.'"
So this represents a theological state of mind, which is quite common to all of us. One of self-condemnation, personal distrust. It is morbid and detrimental to our welfare and might be classed as one of the greatest mental diseases. It's all about feeling unworthy, which is the root of most of our unhappiness and illness in this world, is that feeling, that sense of separation where we feel unworthy. Never to be indulged by anyone. It's not something you really want to indulge into. So we're building ourselves back up again. It's always a mistake to stay in that place of self-deprecation. There is no question but that all of us have done that which is not for the best. We've made mistakes. Mm-hmm. So from this viewpoint, all have been sinners, because all have fallen short of divine calling, the divine calling. If we have sinned, it is because we have been ignorant of our true natures, the truth of who we are. And because the experience that we went through was necessary in order for us to bring us back to ourselves. The awakeness, that's what we talk about waking up to. What are we waking up to? That which we have fallen asleep and forgotten about. The divine within.
And he rose up and came to his father. And while he was yet at a distance, his father saw him and had compassion on him. And he ran and fell on his neck and kissed him.
This is the most perfect lesson taught by the great teacher. God turns to us and we turn to God. We take one step toward God and God comes running to us. A more beautiful thought could not be given to us, truly. We look to God and God looks to us, never turns away. If God and you seem to be in an opposite direction, it's not God who turned away. The Father never turns away.
And he rose up and came to his father, and while he was yet at a distance, his father saw him and had compassion on him, and he ran and fell on his neck and kissed him.
And did we just do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a repeat. So go to 12.
Okay. But his elder son was in the field, and as he came near the house, he heard the voice of singing of many. And he called one of the servants and asked him what it was all about. He said to him, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fat ox, because he received him safe and well." And the elder son became angry and would not go in. So his father came out and besought him. But he said to his father, "Behold, how many years I have served you and never disobeyed your commandment, and yet you never gave me even a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But for this son of yours, after he had wasted your wealth with harlots and come back, you have killed the fat ox." His father said to him, "My son, you are always with me, and everything which is mine is yours."
How very human the stay-at-home son was. His real attitude was that God should condemn everything that he himself did not like or believe in. He was puffed up with self-righteousness and the emotional concept that was filled with petty vanity and fuming with anger over his brother's welcome home. I expect that we might meet him in ourselves every once in a while. Could be nearly every day sometimes. In our own personal experiences with other people, in our intolerant attitude that we might have, an uncharitable attitude toward others, who we think that don't think the same way that we do. But God knows nothing about self-righteousness. God knows nothing about self-righteousness, and as he knows nothing about evil. For both are false. And remember that God is only truth. That's false. Therefore, he said unto his eldest son, "You are always with me until all I have is yours." This implies that the eldest son had somehow missed the mark, and that the youngest son had received everything. For he had been living in the midst of plenty. The son that stayed at home, he'd been living in the midst of plenty. He'd been living this abundant, extravagant life. But he did not realize it, and so he didn't receive all the good that the Father had for him. So to summarize this parable, thank you, Dennis, the voice of Jesus. So to sum it up, our ultimate freedom then is the freedom of choice. Freedom of choice. No matter what we choose, God, working as the law, always says yes. As we move outside of that divine givingness, we are not consciously united with God. And we live in want. We live in that lack and limitation mode. No one can bring us back. No one can bring us back but us. We're the only ones. And the moment we wake up, we bring ourselves back, no matter how far we have gotten, no matter how low we may have thought we sunk. God is waiting for us, always waiting for us, with outstretched arms, to bestow the gifts of heaven upon us. No questions asked. This is the givingness of the divinity, the divine I am, the great Spirit, God itself. Condemning ourselves for being always does no one any good. So get over it. That's what that parable is saying. And finally, as the stay-at-home brother has taught us, that we are, whether we know it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we take advantage of it or not, we are always living in the midst of the river of good. We are always living even, I don't care what the appearance is, we are always living in the midst of the river of good, because we are surrounded by a spirit of living intelligence. We're all part of God, each and every one of us. And this eternal givingness, love, goodness, and power that wishes to express itself through and as us. And so I suggest that we use our ultimate freedom of choice and choose, as the prodigal son ultimately chose, to come home. So it is.
So it is.